The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
There's a story that I've said countless times. I wouldn't be surprised if we've said it in different places hundreds of times, that I had the privilege to start saying a year ago. And Baruch Hashem, I know many others have said over the story. It's been written up in different places, but we had the schluss here to say the story. So why would I repeat the story if you know it so well? I'll go through it quickly because it's the new part that I just heard today that I think you need to hear. And I'll tell you who told it to me on the comment that he made. I'm sure that all I need to say to you about the story is the words reverse Hagba. I say the words reverse Hagba, I'm already looking at your facial recognition. Everybody knows exactly what I mean. We'll say it as quickly as we can about a bacher who was extraordinary beyond words. In every single conceivable area, he was mamish, azevi mizokt, in a league by himself. And he went for a bechina, for a faher, to the tzaddik, Rabbi Yochanan Vosner in Montreal. I had said that I believe he was tested on Dal Chalkei Shulchan Aruch. Subsequent today, I found out the test was on two of the Chalokim, Arachayim and Yeredeya. Rav Vosner never saw such a younger man, such a bacher who was so extraordinarily accomplished in every area. As you know, it was a bit later. It was actually at a chasna Rav Vosner met the father of that younger man, and he asked the father, telling him how extraordinarily impressed he was with the son. Was he always like this? And the father said, no, let me tell you what happened. And of course you know that the father told Rav Vosner at the chasna, in response to Rav Vosner's question, he said, years ago when he was a bacher in yeshiva, he got called up for Hagba on a regular weekday after laning was concluded, and he did a reverse Hagba. You only do a reverse Hagba on Simchas Torah. No other day of the year do you do it. And all of the people started to murmur and to talk at what they just witnessed. He was called in afterwards, and the Rosh Yeshiva asked him, why did you do a reverse Hagba? And he explained to the Rosh Yeshiva, the boy before me who got shlishi had a terrible, terrible stutter, painful and extremely difficult to listen. He must have been going through such an embarrassing moment. The bracha after the aliyah seemed to take forever. And when he finished, people started to speak about him. He became the topic of their conversation. In other words, how badly they felt for what they just witnessed. And then I got called up for Hagba. And in those few seconds before I did Hagba, I had to make a decision. What can I do to distract and divert the attention of all of the Bachrim off that one who stuttered, and that they should focus solely on me? And so I did a reverse Hagba. And doing the reverse Hagba actually worked. Because at that moment, instead of them continuing to focus on the one who stuttered, their attention was distracted and diverted onto me. They focused on me and what I did, and they started to speak about my reverse Hagba. So he told the Rosh Yeshiva it worked. They no longer spoke about him, but only about me. The father told Rav Vosner it was on that day that all of the brachos and shemayim opened up for my son, Haravanya, Melus, Kishrenis, Midas, Avoida, Hasmada, everything. It was on that day when he didn't live Levadi. It was on that day when he didn't live Anoichi. It was on that day when he thought about someone else that he was Zaycha to all of the tefillos. Now this is a story you've heard from me countless times. Today I had the schus to get a phone call from one of the tremendous Talmidei Chachamim and Geonim, Reb Shmuel David HaKohen Friedman. Reb Shmuel David HaKohen Friedman, soll gesund und stark sein, shared with me that he himself a bit ago had spoken to Reb Yochanan Vosner. And Reb Yochanan Vosner told him, meaning Reb Shmuel David HaKohen Friedman, the Baal State Tzofim, the story like I just told it to you. And then Rav Vosner told Reb Shmuel David HaKohen that at that chasana, The father of the young man then told him a second story. Until today, I was unaware of the second story, but today, thanks to the Baal State Seifim, he shared with me the Maisa, and he added a very interesting postscript. He said, in some ways, the second Maisa is even greater than the first Maisa. But with that, I was certainly intrigued. What was the second Maisa that the father of the young man told Rav Vosner at the Chasa that they had met? Story number one, we know. What was story number two? The father told Rav Vosner, his son now is a younger man living in a particular city near the tri-state area, learning in a Hasidic kollel. And about a year or two ago, as can happen in middle of Seder or davening, a meshulach, someone raising money. My father Zatzal used to refer to a meshulach as an ambassador of Torah. Such a meshulach, a person collecting funds, came from Eretz Yisrael. And he tells Rav Vosner, my son saw him and engaged him in a conversation. Why was the fellow in America? He was raising funds for two children who he needed to make chasnas for, and he needed to raise $50,000 to help make the two chasnas and for other expenses. He tells Rav Vosner that my son was very impressed with this meshulach, this fellow collecting, a very fine, able person, sincere. They had a wonderful conversation, but my son realized that he may not be matzliach collecting. Some people have the ability, it comes easier to them. For this fellow visiting a foreign country here in America, it didn't seem like he would be successful. So my son decided, he had a friend that he went to yeshiva with that became quite successful. Baruch Hashem. He decided that he was going to go ahead and travel to the city where his friend was, now a well-to-do person, and he'll ask him, you Baruch Hashem have? Could you give $50,000? This way the person could make the two chasnas, and he could go back and not lose time and go back to Eretz Yisrael immediately. So this young man, meaning my son, he says, traveled to this particular city. He set up a meeting with his friend, and he told his friend why he was here. He said, could you please go ahead and write out a check for $50,000? The friend responded, normally there are so many people who come, I'm able to give each one 100, 200, whatever it is. But since I see that you traveled the number of hours to come to me personally, I could give a little bit more, maybe 500 or a little bit more than that, but not 50,000. On the spot, my son turned to his friend and said, I'll make a deal with you. If you write out a check now to this fellow for $50,000, this year, in 1 year time, from now for a year, I will learn Shas Bavli. Now, to do that diligently, that means you're doing, as we know, 7.5 pages, 7.5 dafim a day. And in 1 year, I'll finish Shas Bavli, and that Shas will have been learned for you. It will be schusim for you. It will be your siyam Shas. It will be your Torah learning. I'll give you those chusim if you'll write out a check for $50,000. On the spot, the fellow took out a piece of paper, wrote up a contract that he'll give the $50,000 to the fellow in Eretz Yisrael so he can go back, and his friend sitting in front of him just committed for 1 year to learn all of Shas Bavli, and the schusim will be his. Kachava, that's exactly what happened. And a year later, he says, my son made the Siyam HaShas. In fact, he invited me to it, and I came to it, and I saw that sitting on the head table, front and center, was his friend. And I asked his friend, why is he sitting here? And that's when he told me what my son had done on behalf of that person in Eretz Yisrael. So obviously, it was extraordinary that the Gvir, right away when he heard that he could get the credit for, then he was willing to give the $50,000, and that was something that appealed to him. Well, let's analyze that Maisa for a moment. Number one, this wasn't a commitment that he was taking upon himself for a day or a week. It was a serious commitment every single day for a year. To do 7.5 lot the way I'm sure this younger man did it properly might have taken an hour, 2, 3 hours every single day. And who did he do it for? He didn't do it for his brother. He didn't do it for a first cousin. He did it for a fellow from Eretz Yisrael he had never met before until the day before. He just met the person. Maybe he viewed that person as his brother. Maybe he knew better than us. Ataka is my brother. And he was willing to make a colossal, stratospheric, extraordinary commitment of learning Gan Shas Bavli in 1 year. You take the schusim, just give him the $50,000 check, and this way he can go back to Eretz Yisrael and Shul. David HaKohen told me the Maisa today. He said, in some ways, this second Maisa is also as extraordinary, maybe even more extraordinary. For the commitment was for a year, hours a day, every single day. And for who? For somebody he didn't even know. That's what it means not to live levadi. That's what it means not to live an anoichi existence. But rather to go ahead and to use the Kayach HaDibur, to use the power we have to unite. And maybe that was the secret, that although we think he didn't know the person, only met him the day before, Itaka viewed him as a brother. And for my brother, I'll do anything. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zebazeh Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org